We are having spotty hello, everyone. This is Martha Burgess Novak. I do not know what is going on with our broadcast today, but we are having spotty internet, and I hope you all are receiving this on something. I've just lost the feed completely on the internet, at least on Blog Talk Radio. I am so sorry about that. I hope it will come back. I don't know what to do about this. We are on Facebook Live and on Blog Talk Radio, or should be. So, my name is Martha Burgess Novak. And I am up here in a very remote section of the mountains, and we literally have all the speed that we can possibly even achieve up here. And unfortunately, sometimes it isn't enough, especially on a day that's a little overcast. Today we are talking about an important subject, which is how to create a great relationship and how to sustain one if you already have one. I think everyone wants a great relationship. Some people create one, some people don't create one. And today we're going to talk about every aspect of relationship, from dating to long-term relationships. We're going to talk about relationships that settle and why, and we're going to talk about relationships that really are epic, and I'll define what I mean by that in a few minutes. We'll talk about what needs to change, and we'll talk about what needs to remain the same and grow and deepen, but is basically the seed of success when it starts out. We're going to talk about how relationship grows more solid with the years and what that's all about. And we're going to talk about, I think that's most important, what some steps are to create a better relationship, to create relationship period in our lives, and what we need to do in a certain order. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of tips. You can't do them all right now. And many of them, as you see, are going to ride on something that you need to work on first. So I am putting this on the table to say, don't try to do all this at once, because that's just a way that you don't do anything. And it is a common thing that people do, and it is diabolically designed so you won't do anything, so you'll be overwhelmed, or you think you'll do something. So all I want you to do is be practical, okay? And be honest with yourself, and let's take things in the order in which is in your best interest. Now, sometimes people's best interest is to throw themselves into a series of really bad relationships. I've got to tell you, I don't think you need to do that. I think one needs to learn some lessons first and know what we need to do. I'm here to remind you because, in my opinion, you already know, or you wouldn't even be listening to a show like this. So let's do a quick prayer, and then we'll dive into some material. I am live and in person today, as you can tell. I'm live and in person. I'm not sure that's so true of the internet, but I don't know what you all are hearing and what you're not hearing, so I'd certainly like to hear from you if you are. Our website, by the way, is the way you can reach me. It's Martha Burgess, Burgess, Novak, Novak.net. I'm a .net, not a .com. Let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we are so grateful. We are grateful for everything, just as they are, whether we know it or not. For it is in the acceptance of where we are in our journey and the blessings that we do have that more open. You are all we are in different degrees of yourself in us, according to what we think about you. We have a fear-based self, all you. We have a love-based self, all you. And our journey is to go from the fear-based to the love-based self. In our doing that, our relationships with ourselves and all others certainly reflect that. So we ask now, dear God, that you open us to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do on the deepest level of your enlightenment in us. We now ask that we suspend having to know anything and having to be right and having to make other people wrong, and having to make ourselves wrong, by the way, and other people right. That we may really hear a truth beyond our conscious minds, and that we are courageous enough and joyous enough and loving enough to act on those things in our own behalf, which is all you. We thank you for all this. We say this prayer now in your name and in the name of the Ascended Masters and our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show and watching the show today. We do so, dear God, say we hope it gets through to the people that need to hear this. Thank you for everything. And so it is. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest call-in number, because I am live and in person, in spite of what our technology says, is 347-850-1647. So now to our show. A relationship, any relationship, is like a machine with a lot of moving parts. Now, we're going to cover a lot of them in this show. And by all means, call in, ask your questions, and let's discuss what's pertinent to you. We've just given you our call-in number. I'm interested in your creating an epic love, and I'm about to define that. Or at least knowing that you can, and what the steps are to do it. That you might make those steps now or sometime in the future when you're ready for this. And what I mean by epic love is where a couple lasts and each has a good sense of themselves and contributes to the other, where they learn from each other, where they love more deeply through the years, and they live in a deepening mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual experience of themselves and as a couple. And by the way, that's intimacy. Intimacy is not just taking off our clothes and hopping into bed with someone naked. A real intimacy is on a mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual level. So here's the irony. This doesn't start with your couplehood. It starts with the individual. And an epic love can only be achieved when each partner knows how to do this, no matter what the words are that the couple uses to describe the experience, or whether, by the way, they use any words at all. As you know, if you listen to this show, the show is about being more conscious. And my darling husband, when he came back into my life, because I knew him 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, when he came back into my life almost 7 years ago, he didn't know what consciousness meant as I teach it, and quite frankly, he didn't much care. He didn't care about he never saw me on the stage or on the screen or any of that. Still hasn't, by the way, seen me on the screen. And who cares? The interesting thing is he's an engineer, and it simply wasn't his world, but he lived consciousness. He did. And he does. And he has matched me in every respect but the words. And I match him. And now, of course, in many cases, we are speaking some of the same language. And what he does not yet know and experience and own on a deeper level, he is open to, and that's really all one can ask. He believes, in other words, my glasses are so dirty. He believes that I know it, that I've seen it, that I believe it, and he certainly respects that. And one day there will be an opening for him in other aspects if he continues to be that open, and it's fine, you see. So don't get hung up on the words. That's one of the first pieces of advice that I have for everybody. Some people express themselves very articulately, and as you learn to be more and more conscious, and you are genuinely on this journey, you become very precise in your language. You can tell the difference between things, and there's subtle differences. I was talking to a friend this morning, and she was saying that there's a sadness in her, and I said, it's not all sadness. Sometimes it's seriousness. Sometimes it's loneliness. Sometimes it's a variety of other things, but we'll put it under an umbrella and we'll call ourselves sad when that really isn't the story. And we can't help any of that until we break it down and have more precise language for it, you see? So some people express themselves very articulately, and some people don't. Sometimes words are not their language. So what you're looking for, I think, in another person, and I hope in yourselves, is character, integrity, honesty, emotional maturity. And by the way, I'm talking about emotional honesty because most of us would not put our hands into someone else's pocket, but yet we're not honest with ourselves. We've learned to be dishonest in our childhood. It protects us, right? We think when we're kids. We think in our emotional immaturity. We're looking for a person who is adaptable, a person who can recognize a larger truth when it comes by, a person who knows what a privilege love is, and a person who either knows what we are talking about in this show or is willing to discover these things on his or her own and with you. Now, the interesting thing is we got a lot of moving parts to a relationship. We have procreation, the urge to procreate, and it's a very primal urge to continue our species or help our species in some way. I don't have any children biologically. I have my husband's children that I adore. But I was called not to have biological children of my own, but I have had a sincere desire. It has been a burning passion in me to help people. So I think that is the way the procreation energy has come through me. And I think that sometimes we have to expand our definitions of certain words so that we can see how we are using those energies, if you will. Sometimes we seek validation for our stuff. And that is always, by the way, an egoic way of living. We want to know how to not even validate ourselves, but to be at peace with who we are. That's quite a different thing. In that, you always are on to you and what your inner motivations are. And you're always trying to make conscious and deliberate choices based on it's the right thing to do for me and my soul. There are inherited influences that we get from our mothers and our fathers, or whoever our significant older people are. But mothers and fathers are real important, even if they're not physically present in the home. Because the interesting thing is when we have absent fathers or mothers, we, as children, create a fantasy mother and father, sometimes a fantasy self, sometimes a fantasy family. And we think fantasy is always, just lovely and joyous and good, and sometimes it is. But you can also have very negative fantasies as well. A fantasy that is very negative is I'm nothing. I don't matter. That's certainly a negative fantasy, because every energy in the world, and there is no hierarchy in this world or the next, we're all holding up the aspect of God that we are. How in the world do you not matter? The stone in the yard, that little stone that you walk over every day and don't even notice, is holding up its side of the bargain as the aspect of God it is. But we, as human beings, get in the way of ourselves and our knowing that by ego issues, by ego child's mind issues, by still thinking like a child long after our childhood is over. Now, there are other shows, by the way, that are on Blog Talk Radio that are all about this. And, oh, excuse me, there's allergy season going on here. Nose is running a little bit. And one is on the ego child's mind. I hope you'll listen to that. And a lot of others. There are also some other shows on relationship. I think there's a series of 2 or 3 shows on relationship. So some other influences that we have are generational influences, not just mother and father, but how far back some of family core issues actually go. And you have adopted them to belong to that family in a other than conscious way. Sometimes they're conscious, but most of the time they are influences that are not. Those things need to be addressed. There's a personal growth that you are involved with in some way. It will look like your own personal trajectory. And in this, there is a deepening in authenticity, and sometimes it certainly doesn't look like what you think and what society thinks it should look like. It can look quite different, because we are doing things, we are making decisions, we are reacting to things as our soul needs. Now, here's the interesting thing. If your path is to wake up, if your path is to go from the fear-based self to the love-based self, and there are more of us than ever out there, this work is for you. And that is what our soul needs to learn. And we are here to add some light and some information and some talent in whatever aspect we are to this world. There are core issues that influence all behaviors. I want you all to realize that as I teach, certainly my job is to find words to express energy. But it's all energy. Your issues are all energy. Your highest self is all energy. Your behaviors, all energy. Words, all energy that come from core beliefs that are in your nervous system that are active. Now, our job as you heal is to put certain truths on the table. My whole program is about changing the energy from the fear-based to the love-based experience. It doesn't happen like that. This is a path. This is why it's called the Burgess process. It's a process, and boy, does it work, because I am living proof of it. If you think I have anything to offer, and I hope I do, it works. But you're called to this path. You can fight it. You can fool yourself, as we all do. You can be the biggest self-blamers in the world and everything else, but still you're on the path, and eventually it inevitably and predictably does win out what you're here to do, which is love. Core issues are issues that you work on for quite a while. They influence all behaviors. Oftentimes they are subconscious. Things like I'm not lovable, or nobody can ever love me, or I'm not valuable, I'm inadequate in some way, shape, or form. Those are core issues. And they do influence us. And you can't heal. And when we talk about an epic love, those things are not compatible with an epic love. You see? Now, by the way, all of us, sometimes, certainly in the beginning when our hormones are saying procreate, 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 and we don't yet have a lot of awareness because our brains don't even start developing to entertain these higher thoughts until we're in our 20s. It's one of the reasons that I don't work very well with children. I mean, I can talk to children, but I can't do this work on them because they don't have the developed brain to understand this information. You have to have, as my girlfriend said yesterday, there has to be an awakening somewhere, just a little crack somewhere that lets the light in. And then we go from there. Some people have awakened already and have that little crack and have widely expanded it. Some people are just beginning to. This is a show for that, or a show for people who would like to have that. I didn't even know. I didn't have the words for this when I started out years ago. I just followed what I knew to be right for me. So, the reason I'm doing a show like this for you is I hope it's right for you, or some aspect of this is. Now, I think a really good first question for you to ask is, what kind of love do you want to create? And this is not, I'm not talking about relationships. You may already be in a relationship, or you may not be in a relationship. But what kind of love do you want to have? Because we got to bring it out of the fantasy realm and out of, by the way, the resentment realm when somebody doesn't live up to those expectations, those shoulds, those wants, those fantasies. And we have to bring it into a real world and take real action on certain things. It's always very helpful that both people, if you are in a relationship, go with. But the way I always talk to people about this is, you're making a stew. And if you're both throwing rotten vegetables in that stew, how great is the stew going to be? It's not going to be very good. But even if just one of you throws better vegetables into that stew and cares more about what goes into the stew, the relationship does improve. And many times, that kind of love brings in the desire for the other person to meet you in kind and put better things in too. We also have to be very discriminating and realize truthfully what we have. And if that person's trajectory is not that life path, then you have some decisions to make. We'll talk about that in the future, a little on further on in this lecture. Okay. So I think one of the first things I want to say to you, and we're going to hit this a little later on too, is it's very important to choose well. Problem is, when our brains are not, okay, there is something that says I have to, and I see I've got a call or two, and I will go to that. Let me write this down, because it's saying I have to call in at a certain number, and because I am not connected, and I'm going to have to do that while I'm on the phone with you, so sorry about this. And I'm coming to the 917 exchange in just a moment, okay, dears? All right. So one of the really important things that I want to just mention to you is you have to choose well. And when we are young, we just don't have the awareness to know what we need other than in the immediacy of the moment. We don't have the developed brain that sees the whole picture, that is able to seize on some emotional maturity. We're making decisions in a much shallower level of our being, and And the thing that we reach for often is to be loved. And what I want to put on the table is that isn't what any of this is about. And it's certainly not what an epic relationship is about. An epic relationship is about you being love, because that's all you are. But you're either a fear-based, insecure love, based on the ego child's mind, that comes out of the ego child's mind, or you're a very mature one, a very secure one, who is a great channel for the love of God. Now, I'd like to go to the caller first before I get in deeper, because we're going to be getting into quite the territory. Let's see if we can even do this, and if we can bring this person through. Oh, my darling, whoever you are at a 917 exchange, for some reason this is not letting me get to you. If you will get on Facebook Live, you can, under my name, Martha Burgess Novak, you can actually write to me, and I can receive your message. We'll read it on the air without your name, and we will answer your question then. You can also hear this whole lecture, I think, on Facebook Live. Okay. I want to address people that are in the dating experience for a minute and say that you are told in the first few minutes of seeing someone if they are going to be a lasting love for you, if they are going to be the one you choose. And if you don't listen to that, if you skirt by that, you're wasting a lot of time. Not that any time is wasted, because it's all a great learning experience. If you make yourself miserable enough by bringing in the wrong people, not that they're really wrong, because everything's a learning experience. It's only wrong if you don't learn anything, right? So, and you keep doing everything over and over again in an unconscious manner. But you are told, because everyone is God. And the aspect of God you are, if you listen to the inner, you know whether they're right for you. The moment you see them, the moment you hear their voice sometimes, you will know. Now, I say, heed that. Heed that. And you'll save a lot of time and energy and fantasy and everything else. And you'll go on to have a very good life. And if you are even thinking now, as you're listening to this, that, suppose no one ever is the right one, I say, that's just a lie that you're telling yourself so you can do the same thing over and over and over again. Because even if you're not happy, that's what's familiar, and we often go to the familiar instead of into the unknown, because the unknown's scary. We think something bad's going to happen there, and there's nothing bad that's going to happen there at all. As a matter of fact, the only thing bad that's going to happen, and I put bad in quotes because that's a kid word, is that you're bringing in the past over and over and over again, because number one, the ego child's mind brings it in because it is familiar, and you are safe in familiarity even if it's crap. Yeah. It knows how to negotiate the rocks in the water, so you think, all right? But it never occurs to you that there's smooth sailing somewhere else if we change our minds and change the way we do things. And there is. Now, the highest self is also bringing in the crap, because it's hoping that you will stop the pattern. So all of you is cooperating with what you're doing. But you are designed to wake up. You are designed to wake up. It's built into all of us. Sometimes it's not our soul journey to do that, but it is built in to everybody. And if it is your path to listen to the inner and to go from the fear-based self to the love-based self, and to do this work that we so-call consciousness, it's going to be a marvelous journey for you. Okay. If you are trying to be loved, now, I love being positive, I really do, but I also love being truthful. And if you are trying to be loved above being love, don't fool yourself about this. It just reflects that you are still more energy is in the ego child's mind than in the true authenticity of God, of the highest self of God. That's the reason we call it the highest self. You've got a lower self and a higher self. It's all God, but it's fear-based or love-based, you see? So if we are in the ego, in the fear-based experience, if you are trying to be loved, you are insecure, fear-based, believe you are somehow inadequate or unlovable or something. There's some sort of programming down there. That's what I am saying. There are some core beliefs that are often beyond our conscious mind. You say, well, how can I get them if they're beyond our conscious mind? And that's where energy work comes in. That's what we do. The group that I am with are all great energy workers and marvelous at figuring out the psychology of what the energy is doing, not what the beliefs are doing. The beliefs are just reflecting of the energy. We got to change the energy for everyone to change. Wow. And what do you change into? Your authenticity, who you are as the channel for God on the highest level. You change into honesty and integrity and all the things you say you want, right? Because the ego child's mind has these beliefs that, in their own inadequacy, and you've got to break that word down, by the way. This is why you're not more discriminating about who you choose as partners. This is why some of us are divorced. I know I had one marriage before I met the dear love of my life. And my first marriage was wonderful. He was Mr. Right for right then. Absolutely. We lasted almost 18 years. Also, there is sometimes an erroneous belief by the ego child's mind that if you are somehow discriminating, there's not going to be anybody for you at all. But this shows real desperation. This shows how you really feel about you, because are you love or are you not love? If you are love, then you will receive love. But you're in the lack of it. A lot of people, off the subject a minute, but not really, say, I have money issues. No, you don't. You don't have any money issues. You have the lack of money issues. And if you don't start speaking correctly about this, there's going to be a problem. And this is a lack of love issue that we're talking about right now. Not a love issue. You don't have problems with relationships. You have a problem with the lack of them because you haven't learned how to be in relationship with yourself yet. In a loving, kind way. Many of us are just too harsh to ourselves. And I say, part of our path is, how are you specifically harsh to yourself? And let me tell you, it's not on the surface. It's deep down inside of you. You don't even have a clue about how harsh you're being, because it's normal to you for you to keep doing. It's been normalized. You see? There's a lot to discover here. When we are desperate, most of the time we do not attract a partner. And if you do, you'll attract one exactly like you in certain issues. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Several years ago, I had a friend who did not develop past a certain point, and she dated a man just a few times, and this man ended up being a paranoid. He was absolutely paranoid, and he wrote her the nastiest letters and accused her of all sorts of crazy stuff, talking behind her back and everything else. Absolutely not true. And I remember asking her, I said, would you ever have written a note like that to him this had been reversed. If he had been the one to dump you, not that there was any relationship to dump, quite frankly, would you ever? And she, of course, she said, no, never would I have written a note like that. So while that behavior would not have matched because they didn't have some core beliefs that promoted that, she did bring someone in who was as insecure as she was. So it doesn't have to be an exact match, but some of the core issues are going to be the same. Now, when we are working on relationships, I often, when I have a group of people in front of me, and I'm kind of going to spoil the impact of this for you, but I think it is something worth discussing. And here's the thing. I'll have them do an exercise, and I'll say, please write down what you want in your partner. Make a list right now, and I'll give them, 5-10 minutes to do this. And then I'll say, now, I want you to make a list of why you're such a good catch and what your virtues are to bring to a relationship. Everybody, spends 5 or 10 minutes on this too. Here's the rub. If those lists don't match, you're in some sort of fantasy, and you certainly are in the ego child's mind, because they have to match exactly or close enough to be an approximation, because you can't bring in anything except what you are. You will attract what you are, no more, no less. You have to be willing to be what you want. Now, the rub is we can all say, well, I'm willing to be that. I'm willing to be loving. If we're in the ego child's mind, with all due respect, darling, because I was there, we don't know what love is. Not the love I'm talking about. And we've got to find out. Because really, it's all you are. Either a fear-based kind of love, an insecure kind of love, or love that is immensely generous. Now, I'm not talking about sacrificial. I'm talking about who you are in your authenticity on the highest level of your being. The key to attracting a great relationship, in my opinion, is to work on yourself and to find out what love really is. I was so proud of someone about a year ago. She was a relatively new client to me, but I was so impressed because we were talking about core values and what her values as a person really are. And she said, without thinking, clearly without thinking, she said, love! And I said, really? I said, do you know what love really is? And I was so proud of her because she said, no. And I said, well, it can't be your core value right now. It might be eventually, but it sure isn't right now. We got to find out what that is. And people don't know what love is. I want to say to you that issues, are crowding the things that should belong in the emotional body. You have 4 bodies, the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritually. And issues cloud, really, Jay, I see you. I am so glad that you are calling in. The problem is I don't know whether I'm going to be able to bring you on. I can't. It's not letting me. My deep apologies. That's Jay, who lives in Canada, who's a friend, and he always has so much to say. And unfortunately, I can't bring the Jay or the 917 on right now. I do encourage you all, if you're listening to me on Facebook Live, to get on Facebook Live, please, and write me. You can write me on this, and I can answer any questions or entertain your statements there. And I know you all always have a lot to say. And you can always write me off the air. on the Burgess process at yahoo.com. So, we have to find out what love really is. And I'm going to say again that if you haven't worked, first of all, if you haven't worked on yourself, if you have not confronted and seen in all clarity what you're doing in the ego child's mind so that you will want to shift, if you haven't worked on a relationship, if you don't know how to work through problems, if you have avoided them or run away from them or all the things one does because you don't know what the answers are there, if you have not learned to work through things and resolve them, you don't know love yet on the level in which I am talking about, so you can have that epic love. So work needs to be done here. There's a wonderful image that I think is wonderful because I think it is true. You need to be so clear and conscious that when something comes up in your relationship, that you're able to think about it, call it by name, know how to work through and resolve it with the other person, because these are pockets of unlovingness based on the past. And you have to find these things out, because this is how you grow in deeper love and sustain a relationship for the long term, a happy, joyous, intimate relationship for the long term. You've got to uncover these pockets of unlovingness that are in all of us. They come out as arguments. They come out as misunderstandings. If you cannot, in that moment, call it by its name, it's not even that moment. I'll take anywhere from the moment to 48 hours. You know what happens? You either cut and run, by the way, which is a common thing that happens. One of your protections because you don't know what else to do because you've never learned to work through something. Or you sweep it under the rug. So what happens in 10 to 20 years? Well, you walk into the room and there's a big pile of crap under the rug and nothing has a name anymore. And if it doesn't have a name, you don't have the words to help you resolve it. You can't call it what it is. It's just turned into a big pile of anger and resentment. And that's what happens to relationships. And in that case, you've only got a few choices. To keep doing it is one of your choices. And to keep adding to the anger and resentment and blame, by the way, and shame, possibly. You can divorce. Or you can get to work on yourself and say, I love this person enough, and I understand that love is a privilege. And if this person is also in agreement sincerely, not just lip service, to go on this journey, then nothing has happened before now that I didn't create, that this other person did not create, and we're going to create something new in the next few months or in the next few years, how long it takes for us to wake up. Those are your choices. But what happens if you start working on those things and know that now? Then that big pile never builds up. I think one of the nicest things in the world is to have a partner that recognizes truth, a larger truth, not yours, not his, when it goes by. The sweetest thing happened last night with my husband. My husband is a Gemini. I don't know whether that means anything to you, and I don't know what it means to me, quite frankly, except he's very changeable. He has a lot of moods, and he's very smart. And he thinks it's fun to just kind of bait people a little bit, all right? He doesn't mean what he says half the time. He's just baiting people, just kind of going a little bit, all right? He thinks it's a wonderful thing to do. Actually, it's not a wonderful thing to do. And people that don't understand that he is not behind it all the way can be offended. Well, he was offending a friend of mine last night, and he was offending. She doesn't know him that well, and she walked out of the room. I saw her energy; she was a little miffed, and rightly so. By the way, he had been baiting me all day, but I don't fall for it. So when she came back when she stepped out of the room, I said, "What do you think you're doing? That is, you're baiting her, and that's not nice. She has been very kind to us, very kind to you, and that isn't nice." And that was really all we said. And I saw him thinking about it, right? And he recognized the truth when it went by. It's not my truth, by the way. It's just truth, isn't it? There are larger truths that make a good relationship. It isn't your truth or my truth. Just what supports a good relationship, right? Baiting is not one of them. And what was so interesting is, and this is very personal, so here we go. As we were falling asleep last night, he leaned over, he put his little mouth to my ear, and he said, "Thank you." I knew what he meant. We didn't have to say any more. That's one of the reasons I love the man that I do. He is special. And he recognizes the truth when it goes by, even if it, slaps him up the side of the head or something. It's a wonderful thing when a couple can say thank you to each other instead of fighting each other. I am not angry. I am not. Oh, come on. Come on. Just be honest. That's why emotional honesty is so important. But nobody's born emotionally honest. We learn to be dishonest when we're kids as a protection. So we have some learning to do for the rest of our lives, honestly, to get to our authenticity and that wonderful, generous spirit where we can just say thank you. Okay. Now, how we treat other people, though, is really how we treat ourselves. And we must learn to love, and we must learn how to treat ourselves with kindness and respect, and have a good relationship with the self. And I guess I said, we normalize bad behaviors to ourselves, and we think it's normal. We think we're loving ourselves when we go out and overspend, for example. I had a woman that had bipolar tendencies a number of years ago, and I said, "Man, you really don't love yourself." And she said, "Oh, yes, I do. I buy myself anything I want." She was in terrible debt, and she was hiding it. And I said, "No, you're buying yourself stuff. That's very different from loving yourself, being respectful of yourself, having a relationship to yourself, being honest." You see? Sometimes we mess up the words because we are in our unconscious. We're working out of these old core issues of fear. Okay. If you want to love on the level in which I think you do, or you wouldn't be listening to a show like this, you have to figure out how you are harsh to yourself, how you are denying yourself, and how you can have a better and kinder and gentler and more respectful relationship to yourself. And the epic love starts there. You, my dear, are the epic love. But you have to work on it. Nobody is born this way. Nobody is. So, we cannot go into a relationship that we expect to be epic Because I imagine there is a powerful, wonderful, life-enhancing epic and an epic that could send you down the drain too. We cannot go in to this kind of relationship with selfishness, with the need to control, with the tendency to sacrifice, with the feeling that you don't matter, with fears and insecurity and jealousy, rage, or, by the way, prejudices. You have to work on yourself. You have to work on yourself. Now, lest you think, oh, I'm so tired of working on myself. Oh, that sounds like too much work. Look, God's trying to give you everything. Have you heard that yet? God's trying to give you everything. Everything is in you to receive. You are a receiving machine and a manifesting machine. But you're in the way if it hasn't shown up yet. You're just in the way. So you bet your privilege is to figure out why you're in the way. That's what a good energy worker, or good anything where you are. Some people reach for this with ministers and psychologists and in a lot of different ways. We're just one of the ways. But you got to figure out what's in the way so you can have not what you deserve, because nobody deserves anything, but what you were born into. This is an abundant word. You are an abundant person. If it's not showing up in your life, if love isn't showing, you're not loving enough. That's all. We got to find, and it isn't that something's lacking in you. You were standing behind the door when God gave it out. Absolutely not. It just means there's some work to do, and you got to do it. There's not a shortcut to this. There just isn't. So as soon as we go, okay, there's no shortcut to this. Let's go on and do the work. Your life will certainly reflect that. We just can't not get ourselves ready if we want something more. Now, I've been doing this work, some form of it, for a very long time. And as I said, this dear husband of mine, my second marriage, showed up 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago. I knew him 50 years ago. I'm not going to go into the story. You'll hear this in other shows. Go back to the relationship series, and I think that's one of the places that I told our story. But let me tell you, I've worked on myself and the relationship with me for a long time. My friends and clients just saw absolute magic happen. As a matter of fact, I had a client that said, I don't know how you're going to meet somebody, because I kept saying there's somebody there in my energy. And they said, we don't know how you're going to meet somebody. The only thing you do is stay in your house and work on people and then go to Whole Foods. That's it. I said, they were going to have to show up at your door. Well, you know what they did? Michael didn't show up at my door, showed up on the internet. He found me on LinkedIn by tracing down the sale of my parents' house. He didn't even know my married name. We'd lost touch. And I had been trying to find him at the same time because I was so sad that I'd lost such a great friend. Spirit told us to find each other. But it wasn't out of need, egoic need. There is a need to complete our love with the person we choose, complete the love that we are on a higher level. And we were both feeling that, reaching out for each other. Spirit did not let us know at the time we were reaching out, and we didn't find each other for 4 months after reaching out. Spirit did not let us know that it was each other. And there was a reason for that too, and it's fine. You see these things in hindsight, because when you're in it and things are changing, we often call that chaos. And of course, one of the laws of this world is that new order comes out of chaos. And when you're in the chaos, in the change, chaos isn't bad, it just means change. You can't see where you're going sometimes. And why isn't that all right? This morning, my girlfriend and I looked out of our window, and there was this marvelous cloud over where we are, right? And we were saying, you can't sometimes see anything but a white mist out there. I know that happened to me at one point in my life, and here's the why. And it isn't bad, and we rail against it. We're frightened of it, but we can't see the future. And she and I have always been enormously intuitive, right? So not being able to see what we look like, what our lives are going to look like 5 or 10 years down the road, very disconcerting. But that's all it is. Shouldn't be frightening, because that little white mist that's there is actually given to you by Spirit. It's actually a gift, because you would change what's on the other side of that, because you haven't developed enough to not change it and realize what a gift it's going to be. You see, there's some things that have to open up in you before those clouds part. So fog, or a cloud this morning, is a great metaphor. All right, let's keep going. Get yourself ready. I don't care what level of development you are in. If you don't have what you want yet, you got more work to do. Because the inner reflects the outer. The outer reflects the inner. And it has to change in the inner first before the outer changes. That's the way it is. One of I think the most damaging things we can tell ourselves is that we are fine. We're fine the way we are. Come on. You must not think you're fine and that you don't have any work to do. Because everybody does. Every single person does. If they're on this path, they do. If they want their life to change, they do. We can't fool ourselves, though. We can't have the same person come in over and over again, the same, let's say, abusive person, the same non-supportive person come in over and over and over again today and call it different. Oh, this is so different. That's a lie. That's coming right out of the ego child's mind. And then the mask comes off and we go, oh my God, I attracted the same thing over again. Come on. We're trying to create something different here. You can't be afraid to do it. This is, and it falls into 4 categories if you're doing something like this. When you say, I'm fine just the way I am. This is fantasy. This is avoidance. This is unawareness. And this is completely unrealistic. Let's put that on the table right now. If you want change, if you want a different love, you yourself have to be different. And you have to go exploring. I want to put on the table that, where did I write this? Okay. There are 5 stages of a relationship. Why don't you write these down? You know, I think these are important enough to write down. There are 5 stages. Number 1 is the meeting. And of course, actually, to even meet, it starts in energy before that. But let's just say the meeting, energetically and physically. Number 2, awareness and discovery. And this should go on for several months. The 3rd one is the decision to be more intimate. The 4th one is the decision to investigate the long term. And the 5th is the long term. Now, a lot of times people go through that entire process before they realize they didn't know enough, they didn't do enough work in the awareness and discovery phase. And let me tell you, you can't cheat. You cannot cheat unless you are very, very developed consciously. You cannot cheat with any phase. You're going to get in trouble. You have to go through these 5 stages. I laugh and say, I have the funniest story, really. I'll tell you the whole story because sometimes you just hear the wisdom at the end, but I think this is so funny, the way this happened. And here's another intimate story. Years and years and years ago, I was in my 20s. And I had this gynecologist that was very small. I'm very tiny, but he was very small, even smaller than me, bald-headed, little tiny glasses like these, little squinty eyes, didn't see real well. Very comfortable for a gynecologist, by the way, to have someone that doesn't see real well. And he was very, very mousy. And the reason I even went to him was that he was married to a friend of my mother's, and this friend, we always laughed. She was very dominating and very bossy and very whatever. And he said to me one time, he said, "Martha, you have a boyfriend?" And I said, "No, dear, I don't. I yet have a boyfriend." And he said, "Well," now keep in mind the character that I've told you about. He said, "We're all selfish brutes, but you just have to find the selfish brute that you can live with." And I just thought that was hilarious, because if anybody was a selfish brute, I thought it was his wife, and I'm sure she accused him of being a selfish brute. I thought it was hilarious. But anyway, look, what I'm trying to say here is we all have flaws. Every one of us, we all have flaws. I would, by the way, know what yours are and work on them, but we all have flaws. It's impractical to think that a partnership is going to solve all your problems, because it will absolutely not. And it's going to amplify anything you haven't worked on. The unlovingness is going to come up. So what if you've got two people that are resisting that and hearing about themselves and learning something on deeper levels, right? Whoa, and it's not going to be a powerful, well, it could be a very powerful partnership, but it won't be a real happy one, right? What if you get two people who acknowledge that everybody's teaching for each other, they want to, they're coming emotionally naked to each other, they're trying to work through, they have a choice to work through it, and they say, that's our choice. To see what my part is, what your part is, and how we're going to do it differently in the future, so we don't have this come up again. Wow. Yeah. That's a good partnership. So everybody has flaws. In the discovery and awareness and discovery phase, you better find out what the flaws are in the other person and see if they're flaws you can live with, because we all have them. What are the flaws you can live with? What are the flaws that you show them that they can live with? Okay. A lot of times, people that don't know what love is and don't know how to work through problems, they will rush relationships. You may be rushing a relationship, or the other person may be rushing a relationship. But let me tell you, there's no way to interpret that but big red letters on the wall saying, I can't go any deeper and I'm rushing you into a relationship because I can't. That's it. A lot of times people use sex. If I can just get them to sleep with me, if I can just give them great sex, they'll get in a relationship with me. They will love me. That's ridiculous. And by the way, this isn't just women. This is men. Everybody does this. Or they so protect themselves they don't let anybody in, and there's nobody in their lives. By the way, it's the same thing. They haven't learned to work on these deeper levels of themselves. A lot of times when I'm working with people, I say, they'll say, I don't know what an intimate experience is, and they've been working with me for 14 years. And I say, well, you have one with me. I know everything about you. You know everything about me. But you're not applying it to how you would talk to other people. They're still trying to get somebody to like them because they need validation of who they are. Come on. You don't need any validation of who you are. You are who you are, and you're growing and deepening and changing and wanting to learn more and wanting to expand and grow. Come on. That's great. So we must not rush. I love the fact that you are romantic, But I don't want you to romanticize. That's like casting a rosy glow over everything. You refuse to see what they're telling you, that you can't live with, by the way. You'll find out. But if you know it on the front end, if you can see it on the front end, then you can keep moving and find the persons that ultimately do match you in a more powerful and deeper way. So we want you to stop telegraphing that you can't grow any deeper by rushing anything or being rushed. A lot of times I found that once I get someone to stop fantasizing about having a relationship after 2 weeks, you have no relationship after 2 weeks, kids. You know that? No, you have no relationship. You don't have a relationship until you go into the phase of deciding to investigate the long term. Not really. Sometimes you know earlier. Okay. I want to put on the table, and I've mentioned this a little bit, but growing more intimate through the years, loving each other more through the years. It all sounds like a great fairy story. You know, there's a reason the fairy stories, the little stories, the kids' stories we all heard about when we were little, like Cinderella and those things, all end with, and they lived happily ever after, because the rest of it is your journey. And nobody knows how to walk that but you. Every single one of you are inventing a new model of love, your way. And I'm just trying to give you an easier way as we have these discussions like we're having now. So, I always worry about couples that say they never fight. These are people that are usually in the ego child's mind. Sometimes they are dependent children mentally and emotionally, even though they're in an adult relationship, even though they may have kids of their own. I think fighting reveals pockets of unlovingness which must be resolved. And I want to say that you're really not finished with your argument until everybody loves and respects each other even more on a deeper, no-nonsense, absolutely honest and truthful level. This is how you grow to love more deeply through the years and have that really sustaining love. You can't sweep things under the rug. You can't be full of resentment. And if you recognize that you are, we got to work on that so that you can become clearer and accept that you're going to live differently. It's always nice if the other person says, I will too. I'll go along on that journey. And then things can be really quite transformative in that marriage, that partnership. Love is a privilege, and it's either that or a burden. It certainly is a burden if you don't know how to work through anything. It certainly is a privilege if you do. It's a matter of one of those choices. And whether you believe love is a privilege or love is a burden, that's in you. That's in you right now. If it's a burden, you're still oftentimes in the ego child's mind. If it's a privilege, you're in the adult mind. And when you're in the adult mind, when you're in the highest self mind, it is, you don't argue about it as much. Because if love is really a privilege, that always wins out. Okay. When one is in the ego child's mind and considers love a burden, there's a lot of resentment that builds up in you and in your partner. And as I said, nothing has a name anymore. So we want to get you clear enough, and part of this is learning to be emotionally intelligent so you can call it what it is and how you're feeling, and you can go down to the deepest level. because oftentimes what we're arguing about isn't what we're arguing about. If you don't know yourself and know these deep levels and get all the crap out of the way, you can't see that what you're bothered about is something quite different. I tell this story, and I'll say it again in our time that's left. When I was first married to Michael, we were in Italy. And I was so busy looking at the homes over there. I have such a fun time. I was going, oh gosh, wonder what that looks like on the inside. Oh, they don't have any backyard. Oh, look at that. That's an interesting architecture. Oh, I was doing that, okay? And by the time we had dinner that night, he was furious at me. He sniped at me. Wow, it was like I had a perfectly marvelous day. I was in Italy with the man I love, right? And I couldn't figure out what in the world was the matter with him. I said, what can I do for you? What's going on? What are you doing? And he couldn't tell me. He's not as fast emotionally as I am. That doesn't mean anything. He's faster mentally than I am. We're all different. So what happened was, by the way, I should confess to you now, I don't have a lot of eyelashes, so I wear false eyelashes, right? And I put them in a little glass every night with some oil in it. And so the next morning, I get up first, and I'm still fuming, because just tell me what the bottom line is. Tell me what the truth is. Come on, right? And that is my flaws. I'm a bit fast and impatient. So I hear this little voice from under the covers say, you can't wear your eyelashes this morning. And I'm still angry, right? I say, why not? And he says, I swear this is true. He said, because I ate them. I lost it. You ate them? What? He said, well, the story was he got up in the middle of the night. He thought that was a little water. There they go, right? I thought it was the funniest thing I ever heard in my life. I laughed, he laughed. And then, because by then he knew he had the words, because it just took him about 12 hours to figure this out, to let this bubble up from his emotional experience, he said, what upset me was I thought you were jerking my chain because, we have said all along we're going to live in America. And you're busy saying, all this, and I thought you were jerking my chain about giving me some hope that we might live in Europe one day. And I said, babe, since I was 15 or 16 years old, knowing I was going to have my own house, if you will watch me in America, I'm doing that in every neighborhood we go in. I love looking at houses. I love architecture. I love the way people decorate. I love what they do with their yards. It's part of the creative experience for me. I'm just doing what I always do. And he went, oh, I've seen you do that. I'm still doing that. And it was over, you see? But it wasn't about what he assumed it was about out of his past. And I just am too fast and too impatient, you see? So guys, you don't know yourself well until you know how you do things, where you're coming from, and you are emotionally honest with the information. And then everything can be resolved. You work it out. I just think that's such a funny story. He hasn't drunk my eyelashes since. Okay. We've got to learn to be intelligent with all of our bodies, and mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, quite frankly. That takes work. We're not born that way. Nobody is. And you will have a happier experience if you can go on that journey. Doesn't have to take a lifetime, but it is a lifetime of work. And you can stop anywhere you want. My suggestion is, and I think everybody I work with that has the benefit of consciousness says to you, don't stop. Most important journey you'll ever be on. I think it's also very important to remember in the beginning stages that you're seeing the best that anybody's going to be. I have a lot of people that meet people online or online dating services, and people that don't even take time to use the correct grammar or spell correctly or have good pictures of themselves, that are just themselves without being with everybody else, that are not manipulating you with the motorcycle that's in there or the dog that's in there. Come on, got to be honest, right? And I think that's really okay for you to recognize that whatever you see, that's best they can present. And it's going to go downhill from there if they are not into growth and change and opportunity. And you have to be in the awareness and discovery period, because it isn't about what they say to you. It's about how they live. It takes a while to see. Don't let anybody rush you into anything. You see. You see. You have a relationship with someone ultimately, or to try to discover one or see what's there in there. Once you know that somebody is a caring, loving individual and is going in the direction you are. If that's what you want, there's only one way to get it, and that is you got to have some time. You need to see them angry. You need to see them wrestle with the truth. You need to see whether they avoid. You need to see whether they're in fantasy. You need to see the whole blooming thing. We all come from different backgrounds and different understandings and different ways of doing things. How understanding of that are they? How understanding of that are you? We have to learn in our progress to be more specific with information as well. In other words, we can't put it all in an umbrella. You know, I know that when Michael and I first got together, I adore his mama, but she is very Teutonic and a bit OCD. So when I was just in a hurry, like if I was giving a party or something, and I'm just in a hurry trying to get a lot done, and I'm going, well, we need to do this, need that, he'd get very freaked out, because he'd say, that's domineering, because that's what he saw from the past. And through the years, we have realized that strong, efficient, fast is not necessarily domineering. Show me a better way, do it your way, but I'm just saying it needs to get done, right? Another example of that is what I do for a living, helping people, getting them to consciousness, is not easily put down during the day. First of all, I go from one client to another. My sessions are 2 hours long. We get a lot done. And I'm going like that. He loves to have, and he's retired, by the way, to stack the pans neatly, the small ones inside the large ones in the cabinets. Let me tell you, I can barely feed us both lunch if I have any time at all in the middle. And when I wash something up, if I even have time, because most of the time the dishes stay in the sink until the end of the day when I can wash up, but he jumps in there and does it. And I'm just slinging the pans back under the thing once they're washed. I'm not stacking them up. I don't have time to stack them up. And if I sat there and stacked them up, I wouldn't have time to do what I do really well, you see? So we had to have that agreement. He said, "You're messy." And I said, "No, I am fast, and I got to keep moving, and I got to keep my emphasis on what I do really well. That's what I do. I'm not retired, and I love what I do." So there are assumptions that are being made between people that shouldn't be there. And you've got to learn to speak a precise language, not as an excuse for yourself, but as a way to work out the solution. Because I'm not going to deny him that he needs to stack those pans up. I love to have those pans stacked up. I just don't have time to do that. Nor do I have the inclination to do that, because other things are more important to me. You see? Okay. And honestly, that's not my talent anyway, but these things are my talent. Okay. Another important thing to give you a little tip on a happy relationship is to assume that everybody's busy and doing their own agenda. Everybody has their own agenda, even people that are in relationship with each other or are in partnership with each other. And you have to respect that. We don't just bark orders. We say, do this at your pace. Do this at your time. Let's do this when you have a free moment. I can't reach something up there when you're over here. Would you mind? We don't assume that they're doing nothing. That's a very damaging experience. There is also a very important thing that I want to put on the table for all of you. You have 3 choices in a relationship. One is, and I mentioned these earlier, I'm going to mention them again, and I think they're very important to mention. Well, here we have Toffle. My dog has just come back from a walk. I just got nosed on the knee. You can argue, and then you can resent the hell out of it through the years and add to it. You can work it out, or you can divorce. Those are your 3 choices. And I think it's a very good thing if you are going to go into any kind of relationship with each other, that you both agree that you're going to work it out and there's no other choice. Okay? And then seek any means to work it out. But you have to be willing to change, because you can't be resentful for the last 16 years of your relationship because you put up with it. Both of you contributed to whatever it was. So if you want to change now, it starts now. Now, another thing I want to put on the table is relationship should be number 1, because it is the major privilege in your life. And I want you to realize that everything is weighed against that statement that I just made, that relationship is number 1. So every single thing, people you know, the things you do for yourself, the things you do for your relationship, the things that, the activities you do, how you rear your children, how you do everything, is either supporting the relationship, tearing it down, or leaving it the same. Every word you say, every thought you think, everything. And I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind, you see. If you are aware of that in the moment, am I supporting it? Am I tearing it down? Or am I allowing it to be the same? I sure wouldn't tear it down. And you've got to be very aware of that. Is it the way you're speaking to someone? Is it the assumption you're making? I mean, this whole lecture has been filled with information along those lines. When you have a great relationship and when you have a poor relationship, if you are in relationship, it is yoke. It is a yoke. Like, 2 lovely oxen that can pull quite the heavy load if they're moving together. But if one of them is still and the other one's trying to move or going in different directions, it's just not going to work. So the reason it's so important to be able to work out your problems is because if you're going to have a wonderful situation, you've got to go together. Now, this is not somebody having to sublimate themselves to the will of another. No, this is what is the larger truth here. What is something that we can agree on and both change so we can go together from now on in this issue. That's very important. You are an individual. You were born alone. You will pass away alone. That doesn't mean without friends and family around you. That means we do it alone. And that means that you have certain balance points, things that belong to you and you alone, that help you be happy, because happiness is generated from within. Many people really honestly don't know how to make themselves happy. They've never thought about it this way. I'll tell you some of my balance points. Animals. I love animals. I love all animals. I really do. I think they're fascinating. I love people, and I love community, and I love children, and I love what they are becoming, and I love psychology, and I love God and spirituality, which is in every aspect of my life, at least I hope, and always open to that. I love helping. I love gardening. I love beauty. Beauty is real important, and I love creativity of all kinds. I do a little jewelry making. I do cooking. I love painting. I love fine painting, which I do not do. And I love being able to buy those things when they come across my path. Those things I cannot give up, no matter who my partner is, or I will be unhappy. Oh, there's some things that I could give up, like going to the movies as often as I did at one time, working the long, long hours that I did at one time. I could give those things up and still be happy. But balance points and who I really am cannot be given up. They need to be deepened. You can't give yours up either. And if you don't know what they are, we got to find them out. Because you've got to make yourself happy for you to have a happy relationship. It's the good vegetables you put into the stew you mentioned earlier. And your partner needs to love what he loves or she loves as much as you love what you love. And you need to not necessarily love what they love, but support fully their love for it and enjoy that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to finish up next week because we've only got 3 minutes left in our broadcast. Oh, I do so hope you've heard this. Well, some of you all write me, Martha Burgess, Novak.net. Let me know if you've heard this on something. If this has even gotten out, I'd appreciate it very much. If not, I'll do some version of the show next week. But I'd like to continue on with a little more information next week. And we will keep on from there. I've enjoyed talking with you today about this, and I hope it's helped. You know that there's everything in the world to look forward to, really. But if you think you can have all that, and you can have all that, without change and growth, that's the opportunities are inherent in that, and that happens inside us. Not trying to change everybody else. That's called control. But being cooperative with change in us. Dear God, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to be together today, talk about these things that we talk about. Love who we love. Experience what we're experiencing. It's a great starting place to deepen ourselves in you. To listen to the 1 or 2 things that we will work on first, and to be grateful for everything. For in gratitude, the more opens. You who are all we are know exactly what we need next. We don't have to reach for it. We don't have to be grasping. We don't have to try for anything except the appreciation of what we've got and the recognition and the awareness of our blessings right now, and that we are love. Get us all to it, dear God. And we thank you. We say this prayer now in your name. In the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show today. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd appreciate it so much if you'd follow us. If you send this show or any other show around to your friends, it would mean a lot. I'm so sorry, Jay, and I'm so sorry for the 917 exchange that we couldn't get you on the air. Sometime when I am here, it's difficult. Sometimes when I'm there, wherever I am, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's easy. But please keep listening. And if you can't find us on one system, perhaps you can find us on the other. Thank you so much. Please follow us, share the link, and do communicate with me anything you'd like through our website and our phone number. Thank you so much. God bless you. God loves you through you, so you be kind to yourselves. Bye-bye.